This is the benchmark. If you consider yourself a competent guitar player, this should be easy. Hey guys, welcome to Guitar Nutrition. Today we are going to be talking about one of the best exercises that I think exists for developing our skills as guitar players, if we do it correctly. Let's start with the mechanics of the exercise. We'll talk about what exactly it is, and then discuss what we want to be thinking about and watching for while we're doing it in order to get the most out of it. For the last 10 years, I've called this the caterpillar exercise because I couldn't think of a better name. It's not great, but it works. And it kind of describes what we're doing with our fingers as we are going up the fretboard. Basically, we want to start in the first fret with our first finger and then move up the frets one at a time, using a separate finger in each fret. Then we move down to the A string. Then we move down to the D string. And we just keep on going all the way until we get to the top. When we get to the top, we're going to land on that high E string. That's going to be our pivot point. Then we're going to turn around and come straight back down. That's the core of the exercise. Let's discuss what we need to be aware of as we're playing it in order to get the most out of it. First of all, we want to be paying attention to our hand position. This is really important and something that catches out a lot of people when they're starting out doing this exercise. If you look at my hand, you'll notice that my index finger and my pinky finger are both angled inwards, and I have one finger per fret. Actually put your fingers down on the strings to get used to this position. What you'll notice is that the fingers don't fit with perfect fretting position when you put it down like this. It's really hard to stretch your hand in that shape, so don't worry if the fretting position is not perfect. As I go up and play this exercise, there's a little bit of a jump sometimes between my second and my third finger as I move to the best fretting position for each one. We want to make sure that our thumb is behind our middle finger, about halfway down the neck on the guitar. A lot of people, when they start doing this, are really tempted to use the side of their thumb or the tip of their thumb to hold the back of the neck. We want to be using this flat part of our thumb because that allows the force from the fingers to get transferred down into this muscle here, which is a stronger muscle. If we use the side of our thumb or the tip of our thumb, basically all the force ends up being located in this knuckle here, which is not ideal. A lot of the problems students have with this exercise when they're starting out is due to the fact that this muscle here is not very strong. If you put your hand out and try and touch your thumb to the tip of your pinky finger without moving your pinky finger, you can't. It's not going to work. But what you'll feel is this muscle in here engaging, it's starting to work. This is the muscle that needs to be strong for us to hold our hand in this position with our thumb here. If I just remove my hand from the guitar, you'll notice it's in this kind of like weird shape where I've got the thumb over. We've got to develop the strength in our hand in order to execute this exercise well. So don't worry if it feels a little uncomfortable. If you're feeling this muscle working, that's a good thing. Over time, you will develop the strength and you will develop the dexterity in your hand to do this. Conditioning our hand properly by strengthening this muscle and developing dexterity is really important because every other issue we might have as we're playing this exercise is going to be a result of not holding that thumb properly. For example, it's important that we keep our palm flat. If we think about this part of our palm, we want it to be flat as we are playing this exercise. A lot of students will have their palm on an angle. And the reason they do that is because they are not used to moving this thumb around like that. See, it's all comfortable. There's lots of space. I'm not having to engage this muscle. But when I do this, it flattens my palm. This flat palm is really important because it allows us to have a rounded pinky finger. If I angle my palm, because this muscle here isn't engaging, what that does is it straightens the pinky finger, which makes it a heck of a lot harder to use. Have you ever tried carrying groceries with your arms out or doing something at a distance, it's a lot tougher than if you bring this arm in. If you're picking up something heavy and you hold it close, it's easier to have it here than it is to have it out here. The same principle applies with our thumb. When we are playing the guitar strings, which have tension on them, so it's like we're lifting weights. If we do that with this knuckle, nice and close as we can have it, we do that by keeping it rounded, we're going to have more strength on the tip of our finger. If our palm is angled and the joint down here is really far away from where we're trying to apply the pressure, it's going to be really hard to use this effectively. And we also won't have as much dexterity because we're flapping our finger around like that. We're not able to use the tip of it well. Another thing to think about to help with keeping a nice rounded pinky is to bring these knuckles here forward. They should be in line with your fretboard or just in front when we're playing on the lower strings. As we move our hand down, what you'll find is that these knuckles will end up behind the fretboard or just in line with it. As we come down though, what we want to do is end up with a straight line between these knuckles here and our elbow. We don't want to keep this angle in our wrist as we come down. That's really important for not developing RSI type symptoms in our wrist. Just doing this exercise is probably not going to lead to that, but it's always a good idea to get into the habit of playing with good posture and moving our hands in such a way that is not going to add to any other movements we might be doing that could result in those type of symptoms. If you are getting a sore wrist and it's like aching and you're thinking it might be RSI type symptoms, make sure you do see a physio. But as we mentioned earlier, a little discomfort in this muscle just because you're using it is not a problem. It's like going to the gym. If you don't feel your muscles after going to the gym, you're probably not lifting heavy enough weights. There is a lot of stuff we have to keep in mind here. If you want a list of all of these things we just talked about for quick reference, make sure you check the link in the description and head along to the Guitar Nutrition website. When we're practicing, there's this idea called mental bandwidth. What that means is we only have so much focus. And as we've just discussed, there is a lot for us to be thinking about as we're doing this exercise. And we want to make sure that we are able to focus on all of these different things, a whole list of things with our left hand. We also want to make sure we're alternate picking with our right hand, which we didn't really talk about, but that's really important. And so we want to practice it slowly so that we are able to move our attention around and check that we are developing the technique correctly with our hands. If you need this much mental bandwidth in order to focus correctly on everything, and you try to do it faster than you can, what that does is that reduces the amount of mental bandwidth you have available. You still need this much, but you've gone and reduced the mental bandwidth. That means there's this much error for you to start making mistakes, which is not ideal. Practicing slowly to monitor and supervise our technique is always important. When you're starting with this exercise, I'd suggest beginning at 70 BPM, one note per beat. I find anything slower than 70 is a little too slow for you to really keep track with the click. I have a click here at 70 BPM. Try and go one note per beat. Once you get good at doing 70 BPM, one note per beat, you can begin to increase the tempo until you are able to do it at 140 BPM, one note per beat. Then what you want to do is drop the tempo back to 70 and start doing 2 notes per beat at 70. Still doing 1 note per beat as well though, because remember this slow version is our opportunity to really think about and notice what we are doing. Let me show you what we're aiming for with this exercise. I'm going to set my metronome to 120 BPM. I'm going to start doing 1 note per beat. This is the slow version. This is where we are still able to think about and observe our technique, making sure it's looking really tidy. Then we're going to go up to 2 notes per beat. This is a bit faster, less time to think, less mental bandwidth. we're going to go up to 3 notes per beat, which is a different feel. People don't often practice threes, but it's important. Then we're going to go up to 4. 4 notes per beat at 120 BPM is what I consider the benchmark. If you think of yourself as a competent guitar player, that should be pretty easy for you. Especially moving between 3 and 4 as well. That's something that's worth practicing. But even though you can do it at 4 notes per beat at 120 BPM, it is still really important that you practice it 1 note per beat at 120 as well, because that gives you so much more mental bandwidth. It allows you to really shift your attention around to everything that's happening, observe your technique, and make sure that you aren't letting any bad habits slip in. Don't feel like you have to do it with the click. There's no rules when you're practicing this stuff. If you're doing it at 70 BPM, 1 note per beat, and you're finding it's just too hard to concentrate on anything, simplify it. Don't be afraid to simplify it. If 1 note per beat at 70 is too fast, turn the click off. Focus shifting your attention around without that going on. Just do it on 1 string if you need to. This exercise is here to serve you. Don't feel like you have to perform it a certain way if it's messing with you as you're beginning.